Hello everybody, my name is Omar Majitov and I'm junior at Georgia State University pursuing computer science bachelor's degree. My today's topic is digital autism. I want to tell you why our generation has such a high level of anxiety. So many people have ADHDs, and why do we have such a hard times trying to plan out our future? I was terrified when I first heard about this concept. So I had to dive deep into the topic to figure out what was the truth. And I couldn't believe my findings. I couldn't believe that such a mundane item as a cell phone or our iPad or my second phone can affect my brain to any degree. But apparently every day it does. I finally understood why do me and my friends feel so depressed all the time. Why do we feel so lost? Why is it so hard for me to pick up a book and read it from start to end? So that is what I'm going to share with you today. The reason why I want to talk about this with you today is because it's our assignment, but more importantly is because I'm truly concerned with where does my generation is heading without even realizing we're being poisoned every day. My thesis statement today is that our smartphones are causing us to develop more and more autistic patterns every day, meaning we're less likely to engage in social activities. We're less likely to try to build a deep, meaningful connection with a new person. It's easier for us to interchange people without seeing any value in them. And it is more likely for us to stay in our little comfortable bubble without trying to step out of our comfort zone. Firstly, I will tell you what we know about brain and in what 3 modes does it operate. Secondly, I will tell you in what kind of world do we live in and how does it affect our brains. And finally, I will discuss the behavioral and emotional outcomes caused by hyper-informational world that we live in. I want to start off by telling you what we know about brain today and what 3 main structures are there that our brain uses when it goes through our daily lives. So while our brain is only 2% of our whole weight, it uses 20% of the energy in our bodies. So evolutionarily, it's been developed so that it consumes something that is easier to process through. For example, in food, our brains love sugar because it's easy energy. And in content, information, our brain consumes simpler information. So for example, if I give you a choice between a science paper and somebody's Instagram, your eyes are gonna automatically look at somebody's Instagram because that's a visual content that's easier to consume. So according to Ashley Chen, brain uses 3 main behavioral and emotional structures to go through life. First is a central executive network. That's a network we use when we're fully absorbed in a task. Like when we're writing a paper, we're reading a book, we're watching a video, we're assembling a model of a plane. That's when our central executive network is active. And for centuries, scientists used to believe that's the only network we have, because what else do you need? You have a task, your brain turns on. No task, brain turns off. But no, group of neuroscientists proved otherwise. And this is where the most interesting part starts. So when we are passive and when we think that we're not doing anything, we have a structure in our brain that is active and working non-stop. Default mode network. Central executive network, default mode network. That's a network that is active when we're passive. default mode network is responsible for processing the past experiences, building them up into world picture, finding our place in that world, and building up a future scenario. As you can see, default mode networks is very important for us. It works when we're passive. The best example of that time that I can think of would probably be daydreaming. When you're just looking out of the window and you're not distracted by any external source of noise or anything, you're just looking out of the window and you think that you're not doing anything, but your default network is working at that moment. In a healthy brain though, two networks cannot be active at the same time, and for those purposes we have third network, salience network. So central executive network, default network, salience network. From evolutionary viewpoint, salience network used to tell us what is going to help us survive and what is potentially dangerous. But in our modern human day, salience network tells us what videos to watch and what to skip. And unfortunately, it just so happened that our salience network prefers easier, simpler, and more eye-catchy, prettier content. And unfortunately, content from year to year inevitably gets more primitive and more pretty. And that is exactly why TikTok is so popular today. Next, I'm going to tell you what kind of world we live in and how does it affect our brains. According to Andrew Kurpatov, every month we send about 10 trillion texts and emails. We make about 100 billion searches on Google, and we post about 2.5 billion units of contents. The new reality that we live in is called hyper-informational reality. Every free second we use to scroll through Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok. When we do that, we activate our central executive network, which inhibits our default network. When one person constantly checks out his phone, there's simply no energy left for default network, which is where all the thinking happens. Our brains, when are used in such a mode, starts to hibernate. People who are constantly picking up their phones to check what new content is out there are not able to improve. They're rarely able to turn their heads on. They start thinking stereotypically and become more aggressive. Just think about it. When after a long day of work or school where we're using our central executive network, we come home and we're resting by scrolling our phones or watching TV, watching YouTube, we're not letting our default network do its job. We're quite literally atrophying our thinking structures in our brains, which are especially plastic until 25 years old. Now that I've told you about what we know about brain, three main regimes that it operates in, and in what kind of world we live in, I'm going to tell you in what emotional and behavioral outcomes this hyper-informational world results in. According to Brian Resnick's article, we have about 7 hours screen time a day on average. Interestingly, almost all of the users have the same problem: concentration issues. Remember the last time when your friend said, "Oh my god, I can't finish this book because my ADHD is so bad"? Well, now I hope you're starting to understand why is it so. According to the same article from Brian Resnick, we check our phones every 15 minutes. And that is where conflict emerges, because according to other neurologist Brian Solis, we need 23 minutes in order to get to our highest productivity mode. We need 23 minutes to dive deep into a subject, and we check our phones every 15 minutes. Of course, in reality, we get right back to work after checking our phone, but our nervous system is the one paying the price for such an interrupted regime. It results in high levels of stress and dissatisfaction with the work quality. Now, let's make a brief summary. I have explained you what we know about brain, what three main regimes our brain operates in: central executive network, default network, salience network. I've told you in what kind of world we live in, hyper-informational environment. I also told you in what behavioral and emotional outcomes such an environment results in. We have high levels of stress, high levels of ADHD amongst teenagers and grown-ups, and dissatisfaction with the work quality. And now, as a part of my concluding statement, I'd like to share my own amateur thoughts on this topic that I have not read from anywhere. I want you to leave this video with something to think about. If our default network is responsible for processing past experiences, identifying who we are in the world today, and building up the future, and we are inhibiting it every day by overusing our central executive network, then no wonder we're so scared and anxious and uncomfortable to be alone with our thoughts. We're uncomfortable in a company of ourselves. That is the reason why we're so desperately picking up our phones to inhibit our default network with another dose of content. Thank you very much.